Two brothers approach Jesus with a request that, at first glance, sounds full of reverence. "Let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory." Mark 10:37. But beneath the words lies a hidden desire, recognition. Honor, status, the most striking part? They walked with Jesus, witnessed miracles, listened to his teachings, and yet they still hadn't grasped the heart of the kingdom. This moment reveals something powerful. You can be close to God and still chase the wrong things. But Jesus doesn't reject them. He responds with truth and love, showing that not every request made in faith will be granted, because the Father doesn't respond to ambition. He responds to surrender. This biblical story challenges us, but it also leads us. It teaches us how to pray with a heart aligned to God's will and live a faith that transforms, not one that manipulates. If you want to dive into this truth, reflect on what it means to serve in God's kingdom and how it applies to your own life. Subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications. This journey is just getting started. At that moment in Mark chapter 10, two disciples, James and John, approached Jesus with a bold request. They wanted seats of honor in his glory. The historical context was tense. The Jewish people expected a political Messiah, someone to restore Israel's throne with visible power and authority. The disciples still viewed Jesus as a leader who would bring that kind of victory. They were close to him, but didn't yet understand the kind of kingdom he came to establish. They asked with faith. Yes, but a faith still immature, filled with human expectations. This is where many people get it wrong, thinking that just because a prayer comes from the heart, it must be granted. The Bible shows us that not every sincere prayer is answered the way we want. Even great biblical characters heard no from God. Sometimes we pray intensely, but without discernment. And God, in his wisdom, protects us from what we don't yet see. Faith is essential. But it doesn't force God to follow our plans. Faith isn't currency. It's trust in a bigger picture. Prayer is not just about asking. It's about revealing our intentions and letting God shape our hearts. Not every no is rejection. Often it's divine protection. God's will is good, pleasing, and perfect. Even when we don't understand it right away, picture a father hearing his 10-year-old son ask to drive the car. The father loves him, listens, but says no. Not because he doesn't care, but because he cares too much to allow something out of season. That's how it is with God. True faith shows when we keep trusting, even without getting what we asked for. This helps us grow spiritually and see the kingdom through Jesus' eyes. The disciples wanted glory and asked boldly for it. But they hadn't realized that Jesus' throne wasn't made of gold. It was shaped like a cross. The biblical story makes it clear. God's ways are not our ways. What looked like defeat, the crucifixion, was actually the greatest act of victory. And that kind of glory comes through surrender, not ambition. It's not about effort, but about purpose. It's easy to pray for what we want. But it's much harder to say, like Jesus in Gethsemane, if possible, take this cup from me, ... Yet not my will but yours be done. That's the key. The prayer that moves God's heart is the one that surrenders to his plan, even when it seems harsh. Obedience, not persistence, is what strengthens our faith. The faith that pleases. God isn't the kind that tries to bend heaven to our will. It's the kind that transforms us to live out God's will. Prayer, when done with understanding, aligns our heart with the heart of the Father. If he said no, it's because there's a yes hidden in the right time. Sometimes that time feels far off. But the right answer, from above, always brings peace. But what if that seemingly sincere request reveals something deeper? A hunger for recognition, status, or power? What if behind the prayer is a desire to be seen, honored, or elevated? That's exactly where Jesus cut through the illusion with clarity. You don't know what you're asking. When James and John asked to sit beside Jesus in his glory, the response was clear. You don't know what you're asking. They were close to Jesus, but still far from understanding the heart of the kingdom. 8. It's like someone who's been in church for years but still seeks recognition more than transformation. Faith that's mature knows God's kingdom. It isn't about positions, it's about purpose. Asking for position often reveals a distorted view of what it means to serve God. How often do we, even without noticing, crave applause instead of obedience. We want to be seen, praised, validated. But in the Bible, true heroes in the biblical story often acted in obscurity. Joseph in prison, Moses in the wilderness, David hiding in caves, all were hidden before they were lifted. Jesus didn't condemn the disciples for asking, he corrected them with love, but he made it clear something was off in their motivation. This teaches us that prayer isn't just about words, it's about what's in the heart. How many prayers come from comparison? They have it, why not me? Or I deserve more. That kind of prayer may sound sincere, but it's not. Spirit-led, spiritual immaturity believes we need visibility to be valuable. But the kingdom works differently. God doesn't promote the loudest voice, but the most faithful servant. Greatness, in Jesus' words, isn't on the stage, it's behind the scenes. If we're chasing position more than presence, our priorities need realignment. It's easy to confuse honor with ego. Being honored by God is a result, not a goal. When someone seeks position just to feel superior, they forget even Jesus humbled himself. He, the Son of God, washed his disciples' feet. That speaks volumes. And if Jesus chose the path of humility, why do we still insist on chasing applause? This pursuit of status often comes from an anxious heart, a heart that hasn't yet learned to rest in God's sovereignty. We want everything now, quickly and visibly, but God's process includes waiting, surrender, and refinement. Before sitting on a throne, David had to care for sheep, and it was in that hidden place that God prepared him. People constantly asking for position often miss the fact that the kingdom is built from the bottom up, not the top down. It's not about climbing ladders, it's about lowering ourselves. To serve, true faith doesn't chase status, it seeks purpose. And when our hearts are in the right place, God handles the rest. He knows exactly when and how to lift someone up, but ... Are we really ready for that path? It's because if glory involves a process, are we willing to go through it? Jesus' next question struck deep. Can you drink the cup I drink? Jesus didn't just respond to the disciples with firmness, but with depth. Can you drink the cup I drink? That question carries more weight than it seems. In Jewish culture, the cup symbolized destiny, often tied to suffering. Jesus was about to face the cross, rejection, and loneliness. And yet, the disciples were asking for glory without understanding the cost. The truth is, many want the results of faith, but aren't willing to go through the process. We want victory without battle, healing without crisis, power without surrender. But the Bible makes it clear. Before resurrection, there was a tomb. The greatest biblical characters used by God were also the most tested. You can't walk in kingdom glory without dying to yourself first. The cross isn't just a symbolic accessory. It represents the death of everything that distances us from God's plan. Pride, vanity, comfort, self-reliance. It's in that place of surrender that character is forged. Suffering, though unwanted, is often the tool God uses to tune us to heaven. It's not about pain for pain's sake, but recognizing the purpose behind the pressure. Many people feel disappointed in their walk with God because they think following Jesus means a life of constant visible blessings. But he warned us, in this world, you will have trouble. The kingdom isn't a comfort zone, it's a call to courage. And that doesn't mean there's no peace, it means there's a greater purpose. That's why even in prison, Paul could worship. When you understand the process, you embrace the purpose. It's in the struggle that the knees learn to bend. When everything seems out of control, that's when prayer becomes real, intimate, raw, honest. The cup Jesus spoke of isn't just his, it's ours too. Every believer, sooner or later, must choose, live by our own will or surrender to the Father's. The cross is daily. The kingdom belongs to those who endure. That cup may also come in the form of humiliation, loss, or internal battles. No. One sees, so what do we do? Complain, run, or trust? True faith grows when even without understanding, we choose to stay. Great promises come with great tests. And those who long for the throne must first survive the wilderness. And the beauty of it all is that Jesus didn't sugarcoat anything. He was honest. You will drink the cup. He didn't promise ease, but he did promise his presence. He won't always deliver us from suffering, but he always walks with us through it. That changes everything. It's the glory that follows. Pain carries weight, maturity, and authenticity. And even when the disciples answered thoughtlessly, saying, "We can," without grasping the meaning, Jesus remained patient. He didn't turn away or reject their immaturity. It reveals something powerful. Even when our intentions are off, Jesus keeps teaching. And that brings us to what happens next. After such a clearly selfish request, Jesus didn't cast them out. He didn't yell or turn his back. He corrected them, yes, but with love and patience. This reveals the heart of the Master. Even when our intentions are wrong, he keeps forming us. And that changes everything. Because prayer doesn't need to be perfect, just willing to be shaped. How many times have we asked God for things with motives we only later realized were selfish? We want, insist, pray, even fast. But deep down, what are we really after? Often it's approval, control, or even spiritual status. But Jesus, with his wisdom and gentleness, confronts us. Not to shame us, but to heal us. Jesus' answer to the disciples was firm, but filled with grace. He didn't ignore their mistake, but he didn't cancel their value either. This teaches us that God corrects those he loves. When he shows us we're asking wrongly, it's not rejection, it's refinement. He wants our faith to grow, for us to move from self-centered prayers to kingdom-aligned ones. It's easy to feel disappointed when God's answer is correction. But in that confrontation lies one of the greatest signs of his love. He's not just after our requests, he's after our character. A heart that accepts correction becomes fertile ground for direction. And over time, our prayers shift from, "What I want," to, "What you want, Lord?" That inner shift changes everything. What was once ambition becomes service. What was once vanity becomes devotion. This happened with Peter, Paul, and many biblical characters who began their journey with flawed intentions, but were shaped by God's voice. The Bible is filled with stories of transformation. Not perfect people, but willing hearts. And what if God corrected us today? What if he said, "You're praying with the wrong focus"? How would we respond? Spiritual maturity isn't about eloquent prayers, it's about surrendered ones. That only happens when we're open to hearing his voice with humility, because those who listen grow, and those who grow serve. That's where a new kingdom perspective begins. The love of Jesus never leaves us comfortable in error, shakes us, awakens us, pulls us closer, even when the truth stings, because he sees the end result. What he wants from us isn't performance, it's depth. He sees beyond the words of the prayer. He sees the heart. And when that heart opens up, he begins revealing a new path. And it was with that same firm love and eternal wisdom that Jesus said, "To sit at my right or left is not for me to grant." In other words, he reminded them and us that not everything is in our hands. And that leads us to the next point. Powerful lesson about our obsession with control and status. Jesus was clear. To sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. That one line dismantles any illusion of control we try to hold on to. In our spiritual lives, in God's kingdom, positions of honor aren't earned, they're given. It's not about human merit, but divine sovereignty. And that challenges our natural logic, where effort equals elevation. While the world teaches that greatness is the result of performance, the Bible shows that in the kingdom, position is determined by purpose. There's no point in praying for a spotlight if God called you to the backstage. No use trying to be David if your role is to hold the harp in the palace. Honor in heaven isn't measured by visibility, but by faithfulness. God sees what no one else does. This truth brings freedom. Freedom from comparison, anxiety, and self-promotion. When we understand that God defines everyone's place, our hearts find rest. There's no need to compete, rush, or manipulate. What's ours in God is already prepared in his perfect timing. The focus then shifts. Instead of fighting for position, we fight to stay faithful. That's how faith becomes perseverance. The problem is, vanity can be subtle. Sometimes we mask our desire to be seen under the language of calling. But God sees the heart behind the words. He's not impressed by titles, microphones, views, or likes. What moves heaven is a broken and willing heart. That's how so many biblical characters were chosen, the ones no one expected. David was out in the field, forgotten when the prophet arrived. Joseph was in prison, silent, far from public eye. Esther was just another young woman in the palace. None of them chose their place of honor. God placed them there. And when it's God who promotes, no one can dethrone you. That kind of elevation carries heaven's seal, purpose, not pride. People who constantly try to position themselves in the kingdom risk being sidelined by their own anxiety. The wisest prayer we can pray is, Lord, help me be in the right place with the right heart at the right time. That takes surrender, humility, and patience. 3 things most people avoid, yet they're what truly form kingdom greatness. But what if our place is one that gets no applause? What if the mission is to serve in silence? It's still worth it, because nothing done for God is ever small. The biblical story reminds us, the greatest in the kingdom are often the least in the world's eyes. And Jesus didn't measure success the way the world does. He measured it through surrender, in fact. Jesus himself taught that the greatest in the kingdom is the one who serves. And that's exactly what he begins to explain next. Jesus flipped every idea of greatness upside down. While the world says those who command are greater, he said, the greatest is the one who serves. Simple, direct, and deeply revolutionary. He who held all power knelt down to wash his disciples' feet. And it wasn't for show, it was who he is. True leadership in the kingdom of God begins on the floor, not on a throne. Jesus' teaching in Mark 10 is like a mirror to our generation. We live in a time where everyone wants attention, visibility, relevance. But in the kingdom of God, the greatest isn't the one with the most followers, but the one carrying the most towels. Towels to wash feet, care for others, embrace, and support. The Bible teaches that serving is love in action, not just in words. To serve is to step outside yourself and truly see others. It means placing someone else's well-being above your own comfort. That's what Jesus did with every person he met. The blind, the leper, the Samaritan woman. He never rushed past anyone. He saw, he listened, he touched. And he calls us to do the same. Faith that doesn't result in service is just theory. And here's the beautiful part. Serving also heals us. When we stop thinking only about ourselves, something inside us comes into alignment. Anxiety decreases, pride breaks, the soul breathes, and it doesn't have to be grand. Sometimes it's visiting a forgotten elderly person, helping someone with groceries, or simply listening with compassion. Small acts hold eternal value in heaven. Nothing done in love is wasted. Biblical characters like Ruth, Barnabas, and Abigail were great servants, and their names are remembered not because of their titles, but because of their surrender. And Jesus, our ultimate example, came to serve, not to be served, gave everything. His time, his attention, his tears, and ultimately his life. That's not religion. That's real love in action. Now he calls. He calls the tired, the frustrated, the ones who tried their way and found only emptiness. He calls those who've done everything they could and still feel incomplete. Jesus isn't asking for perfection. He's asking for a sincere heart, a heart willing to say, I don't want to live for myself anymore. I want to live for God. If you feel that stirring, that deep inner tug, it's not random. God knocking at the door of your heart. And maybe today is your moment to come back. Come home. Return to his presence. Return to purpose. It doesn't matter what you've done or failed to do. Grace meets you right where you are. Just take a step of faith with a willing heart. Say in your own words, Jesus, I accept you. Help me live not for myself, but for you. The most life-changing prayer begins with surrender. And when we surrender, he begins a work that only he can finish. Because the kingdom isn't about being served, it's about being transformed. And when it comes to that, there's still so much more to discover. Now stop and think. Have your prayers been about drawing attention or truly touching God's heart? Are you trying to climb ladders? Or are you willing to step down and serve? Maybe this is the moment to reassess everything, to let go of pride, rush, appearances, and make room for a living honest faith that brings you closer to who God truly called you to be. If something stirred inside you during this message, don't ignore it. It might be God himself calling you, saying, "Come back to me. I have more for you." If you feel that call, answer sincerely, "Jesus, I recognize I need you. Come live in my heart and teach me to walk with you." A simple prayer can mark the beginning of a new life, and that choice is yours to make. And if you want to keep growing, learning from the Bible, it's the teachings of Jesus, and the lives of powerful biblical characters who still speak to us today, hit the subscribe button below and turn on notifications, because what God has started in you, he's ready to complete, step by step, with faith, truth, and purpose.